Hello there, welcome back to my reviews of the Rockford files after a short pause over the Christmas period. This week I'll be reviewing Season 1, Episode 20, The £4 Brick, written by Lee Brackett and Juanita Bartlett and directed by Lauren Stoney. If the name Lee Brackett is familiar, it might be because she would write the screenplay for a little movie called The Empire Strikes Back, and also had experience with the detective genre with her screenplays for The Big Sleep and The Long Goodbye, so we should be in safe hands here. The episode begins at the funeral of a police officer, David Banning, attended by some of LA's finest, and Rocky, who is friends with the dead officer's mother, Kate Banning. David was apparently killed in an accident, but Mrs. Banning is sure he was murdered, much to the chagrin of David's fiancée Laura, who is trying to move on with her life.
You have got to accept this, Kate, because you're making it harder on both of us.
When Rocky hears this, he tries to comfort her, but as she is so determined, he offers the services of Jim.
Jimmy.
You're Jimmy? But you told me he was driving your truck.
Which confuses her, as Rocky had always told her Jim was a truck driver. This is a great little touch that really helps develop Rocky's character, as it shows he's so embarrassed by Jim's profession that he lies about it to all his friends, and can't even bring himself to tell the whole truth when Jim, being a private eye, is useful.
He's a private investigator. It's only a sideline.
It's a strong opening that establishes the episode right from the start. We understand Rocky's relationship to Mrs. Banning and get a hint about the kind of person she is. Rocky goes to see Jim, and knowing what we know, it's fun to see him try to schmooze Jim into helping Mrs. Banning out. For free.
Kate thinks that what happened to her son wasn't no accident, but that he was killed deliberate. What do you think?
I don't know anything about it.
It's a lot of fun to watch Jim rag on Rocky as he insists on getting paid to make a point about his father's disdain for his profession.
I'm trying to get you to work for Kate Banning.
Can't she afford me?
She don't have no money.
Oh, you're paying me.
I'm your father.
I'll give you a rate.
As the two get to David's house to meet with Mrs. Banning, she may have been right about David's death, as the place is being watched by two goons. The lighter tone to this episode, compared with the previous one, despite the serious subject matter, continues to demonstrate how flexible the format is, as it never seems jarring, and the development of the familial relationship between Rocky and Jim is perfectly done. As Jim begins his investigation, his first stop is the police station.
Cop? Maybe.
Inside, we get some more character development of Dennis as he explains his woes and how, as far as he's concerned, there's no way that David was murdered.
If there was anything wrong, anything, every man on the force would be working double duty.
He then goes to see Laura and confirms that Dave was acting upset for at least 2 weeks before his death.
Yes, he was. He was jumpy. He was short-tempered. He just wasn't himself.
And that she overheard him tell someone that he would meet them at the Greek Theatre, which Jim checks out and finds a bullet, which he discovers is a cop round.
If a cop fires, he doesn't want that bullet traveling for 2 miles and taking off somebody he wasn't aiming at. And this is a light load.
Jim then stakes out the theatre that night and sees two guys in suits arrive, closely followed by David's partner, Sergeant Wilson. Jim then calls in Angel to do some legwork for him, and I have to assume that Stuart Margolin was called in at short notice for this episode, as it looks like he's wearing a false beard. Having checked in with some of his contacts while being followed by one of the goons, Angel finds out that Wilson is into all sorts of crooked business. And when Jim spots a tail, a car chase ensues, ending with a fantastic punchline.
I wonder what they did to my undercarriage.
Want to know what he did to mine?
They're not coming back.
Neither am I.
Jim takes what he knows to Mrs. Banning and tries to be tactful about what her son might have been into, but she's having none of it, and wants him to find Dave's killer regardless of what comes out about Dave.
And you find who killed him. Dave's memory will take care of itself.
Unfortunately for Jim, this means dealing with Deal, who Jim isn't particularly keen on. Deal doesn't want to hear it and is more annoyed with Jim than usual for even suggesting the possibility of crooked cops.
You're not only casting doubt on the reputation of a man who's been with this department for over 20 years, you are also defaming a man who is not alive to defend himself. I will not allow that.
This is an insightful look at the inner workings of police politics and just how much they are willing to keep up the front that all cops are honest, even if they know that not to be true. To reinforce this, Jim is then threatened by a pair of brother officers to stay away from Wilson.
You want to stay a PI?
I kind of planned on it, yeah.
Then you really should try to have a better relationship with the department.
Which naturally only encourages Jim to keep digging. He follows Sergeant Wilson and sees him meet with the two men he met earlier, before following them to the police station, where he's kidnapped by the two goons. They take Jim to a warehouse and Wilson arrives shortly afterwards. He picks up the £4 brick of the title, a brick of hash, before the goons find the wire he was wearing.
You're right. He was wired. Get him out of here.
With Wilson and Rockford now taken hostage, as the cops move in, Wilson claims not to have known about the murder of Dave, and after a very brief chase, they manage to turn the tables on the goons and their boss. In the epilogue, we discover Dave had reported Wilson to Internal Affairs for running drugs, and was bumped off by the crooks, so the IA flipped Wilson into working for them to catch the drug dealers. We also find out that, despite Rocky's insistence, Jim isn't getting paid, which he never really expected anyway.
I must have spent a little more on that fishing trip than I figured. Could you put my half of the bill in accounts receivable?
This is another wonderful episode where we see far more character development than usual, as the plot really plays second fiddle to Jim's relationships with Dennis and Rocky, and it's all the better for it. We get to see more of how they all get along and really get the sense that they've known each other for years without any heavy exposition. Also, the way it tackles police corruption and Jim's relationship with Dennis is really delicately balanced, showing the inherent problems that come with the police force giving so much power to individuals and the closed-shop mentality of brother officers in the way that it does was very brave, and through it all, it manages to maintain Dennis and Jim's friendship. Mrs. Banning is an amazingly well-rounded character too, considering how little screen time she has, showing such strong moral fortitude in the face of tragic circumstances. Watching her refuse to let Jim soft-soap her to spare her feelings is really quite moving. She's also the only character, virtually throughout the whole episode, to tell the truth, and even manages to convince Jim to do the same in the aforementioned scene. It would have been nice to have a bit more character development of the villains, as they are a bit cardboard cutout, but that's not really what the episode is about. It's about doing the right thing, regardless of the circumstances, and it does that beautifully. This is easily another 5 out of 5 from me. Thank you. Goodbye.